And with that, I'm really happy to introduce our keynote speaker tonight, who, as I said, has flown in from New York. Jumana Abu-Ghazaleh has been working for 25 years in strategy, marketing, product innovation. She opened the office for Leo Burnett and managed that in New York City, and that's one of the most respected advertising companies in the world. Jumana has worked with literally the who's who of companies. I'm probably going to forget a lot of them, but they're names that you all know. Pepsi, Coca-Cola, Yahoo, Goldman Sachs, American Express, Bank of America, Johnson & Johnson, Macy's. I mean, it goes on, the list of brands that she's worked as a consultant for. Her material, some of the material that she has worked on over the years is taught at Stanford Business School. Jumana has an MBA from Harvard, and before that, she was a magna cum laude from Claremont McKenna College. So I'm really happy to have Jumana on board. Thank you, dear.
Thank you so much for the gracious introduction and for giving me the opportunity to spend the evening with you. I think what you're doing here is so important to the businesses, to the economy, and to the stature of Kuwait, this small but mighty country. I'd like to kick it off and spend my time wisely by sharing with you a video that I think will capture the challenges associated with customer satisfaction.
Flying is the worst one because people come back from flights and they tell you their story. And it's like a horror story. They act like their flight was like a cattle car in the 40s in Germany. That's how bad they make it sound.
Right.
They're like, it was the worst day of my life. First of all, we didn't board for 20 minutes. Right. And then we get on the plane and they made us sit there on the runway for 40 minutes. We had to sit there. Oh, really? What happened next? Did you fly through the air incredibly like a bird? Did you partake in the miracle of human flight, you non-contributing zero that you got to fly? You're flying! It's amazing. Everybody on every plane should just constantly be going, oh my God! Wow!
Yes!
You're flying. You're sitting in a chair in the sky.
Yes. Yeah. That's right.
So it's very hard what you do. I commend you all for trying. The customer may be king, but he's not benevolent. Their customers are tough. They're demanding. They're tricky. They're naggy. Faten talked about the peaks. Two things I'd like to take away from this video. The first is that it's human nature, Faten mentioned this as well, to talk about the negative things more than it is to talk about positive things. So it's just our tendency, that's what we do. Not only do we do that, we don't just talk about the negative things, we exaggerate them. You see, it's the worst day of his life, being on that flight. The second thing is that as technology pervades our lives and enters into every realm that we do, our expectation rises. We live in a world of instant gratification, and customer expectations, that first peak, rises actually at the speed of technological progress. And that's why we have to continually run to keep up. And so to actually satisfy customers, we must create moments of delight. Let's go back to the presentation. Technology. Creating delight. Creating delight is it's no longer enough to satisfy people, or the definition of satisfaction continually changes. And to get people to talk positively about you, to get them to go to Twitter or Facebook or Instagram and share with the world, they must be delighted. They must have something they feel that is worth talking about. It must be a wow moment. They must feel like the company or the brand went above and beyond what they expected and delighted them. So how do companies create delight? How is that possible? How can you make people happy? And I want to talk about 3 companies that do that really well, that consistently deliver delight. The first one is Apple computers. And I'm sure most of you have either seen, heard of, or experienced the Genius Bar. Genius is how Apple refers to its staff, how the staff refers to itself. Einstein famously said that a genius is 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration. Well, at Apple, geniuses come out of a 2-week, very intensive training in empathy. Their job, a huge part of their job is actually making you happy. So they're not necessarily graduates from MIT. They're not necessarily the brainiest people in the group. What they're trained to do is understand your dreams, your challenges, your pains, your frustration, what you're hoping to do, what you're aiming to do, what you can't actually achieve. And so they are trained to say, I know how you feel. And people like to feel heard. And so they'll go back because they feel understood and valued. And in a sense, these geniuses at Apple are less technicians than they are therapists. They're there to make people feel heard and understood. And that's why Apple is, without a doubt, one of the consistently top-performing customer service brands in retail, large or small, of any size. The next question I have, and the brand I'm going to talk about, is how do employees become ambassadors? How do you get them to become your brand ambassadors? Richard Branson, the English bad boy, created the #1 domestic commercial airline in America 8 years in a row. And he did that by instilling a sense of pride in his staff. He didn't do that by himself. He didn't do that because the planes are very innovative and exciting and clean, although they are. But he did that by making his staff feel like teammates. They all felt like they were in it together. And this image is actually representative. Richard Branson is a great representation of the brand. His philosophy is felt throughout the organization and all of the Virgin brands. He is one of them, and they are part of his team. They create solutions together. He believes and credits the success of the Virgin brand on 3 basic principles. Your employees should never feel like hired hands. They are fellow entrepreneurs. It's an important difference because an entrepreneur is an emotionally invested individual. An entrepreneur tries harder. An entrepreneur associates their success with the company's success. They are problem solvers. They're not just doers. They don't just execute. They imagine. Second, he says, put your staff first, customer second, and shareholders third. It's rare in this world to think of things in this order. But he does it because the truth is the way you treat your employees is the way they treat your customers. What ends up happening is the world is a mirror to your brands. And if your employees are happy, they will spread that. Happiness is contagious. And people will pick up on that and share it. So putting your staff first and showing them that you appreciate them and making them feel like they belong gives them a sense of pride that they will then share along with your customers, and your customers will boost your bottom line and make your shareholders happy. The third company I want to talk about is one I take personal pride in. I worked on this the launch of this bank. It's a digital bank, completely branchless bank. It was launched in one of the most successful bank launches in history, launched in the middle of the recession in 2009, and it generated $13 billion in revenue in the first 2 quarters. And the reason that happened, and the reason that it's gotten consistently rated as a top customer service provider, is because everybody in the organization was trained to work for the customer, not for the bank. So within the organization, the bank is called Ally. And so they put a stake in the ground that this is an organization that's going to be an ally to the customer. And for people in the banking industry, that was a radical thought. There was a very important power dynamic in the banking industry. The bank is powerful and the people are not. And the bank makes money on fees and holds your money captive. Here was an institution where everybody from the CEO, to the web developers, to the bankers who are creating the financial instruments, to the call center people, their focus and their metrics were dependent not on how much money they brought in, but how much trust they earned. It's a very different kind of thinking. So as a web developer, if you're developing the website and you're thinking, what would an ally do? Versus how can I save money for the bank? Or how can I get them to get more money? What would an ally do? What would I do for myself? And it shows respect for people's time. It shows respect for their anxiety over financial services. Ally believes that success is collective. So instead of saying, that sign in the back that you don't see is very prominent all over the organization, but it says, we make money with you, not off you. And that sort of belief that our success, if you succeed, we succeed, rather than how can I extract as much out of you as possible, is what having an ally means. So why are Apple, Virgin, and Ally consistently delightful? That's because they are powered by a deeply engaged workforce. So having people who are committed to the company and involved in building it and its success is really important. You have empathic geniuses, people whose job is to put themselves in your shoes, not to sell you technology, not to tell you necessarily how it works. Number one is to say, I hear you, I understand you. The genius is emotional, not intellectual. Virgin gives you entrepreneurial teammates. Everybody's in it together, and everybody's solving problems. It's not you guys are over here doing things, and we are here making decisions. We're all collectively trying to figure out the best thing to do. And Ally creates customer allies, people who are on your side, who are earning your trust daily at every opportunity, on the phone, on the website, in the financial instruments that they create. So the link between customer delight and employee engagement is very clear, direct, and scientific. In fact, there's a study in the Journal of Organizational and Occupational Psychology that quantifies this relationship and says that the relationship between employee engagement and customer satisfaction is 0.43. I'm sure that makes perfect sense to everyone. To put that a little bit in perspective, the impact of chemotherapy on breast cancer is a fraction of that. So how impactful, how powerful is chemotherapy in solving breast cancer? We're getting a little closer. Ibuprofen to pain reduction, a little bit higher, more direct relationship. Sleeping pills and improvement, thank God, much better, I need them. But very interestingly, the thing that comes closest to the impact that employee engagement has on customer delight is Viagra. The relationship between Viagra and performance is very close to the relationship between employee engagement and customer delight. That's because it is a very immediate, direct, and personal thing. This is an emotional thing. It happens between people, and that's a connection that's very important to keep in mind. So why does that happen? Because engaged employees create your success. Engaged employees actually perform really well on customer service. 70% of engaged employees actually are strong on customer service versus 17%. So if your employees are showing up to do their job from 9 to 5, they're not going to go the extra mile. They're not going to make discretionary effort. They're not going to take it personally if you're upset. Engaged employees do. 78% of engaged employees recommend it to their company. So we're talking here about several of the peaks that Fatin mentioned. You have, we already talked about the gap in expectation, but to get loyalty, to get people to come back, you have to be strong on customer service, and to get growth, you automatically have in engaged employees a free walking, talking, advertising billboard. These people become your ambassadors. So the question for you is, do you have a compelling employee proposition? In your companies, do you have a reason that brings your employees in every day, aside from the paycheck? Why are they there? What are they doing? How do they feel about the work that they're doing? Is it worth it to them? Are they getting something from it? 60% of companies today say they're not prepared to measure or improve employee engagement. And we live in a service economy. We live in an economy that's driven by service, and service equals people, and people equals staff. If you're not making that connection, then you're struggling. So do you have a robust system that allows you to figure out how engaged your employees are? And I don't mean just a survey. I don't mean a temperature check about how people are feeling about working there. I mean a system that helps you analyze whether your proposition is motivating them, whether they feel like they're part of something bigger, whether they feel like they belong. Gartner says that this year, 89% of companies are competing not on innovation, not on product development, not on anything except for service. That's the number one thing. 89% of companies are competing on service. And so I'll leave you with one quote that I got from a former client who now heads up the leadership department at Kellogg. And he says, to win in the marketplace, you must first win in the workplace. Congratulations, heroes.